Yeah, sorry everyone for the. I know the time zone was a challenge. Some of you guys from Europe and other regions are really showing your dedication for being here. So thank you.
Yeah, from the Ukraine, 3:30 in the morning. Wow.
So I can't tell the number that's in, but it looks like we're probably ready to roll.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody for showing up. And just to introduce myself, I'm James from FiXT. So I'm vice president and co-founder of FiXT. And just a quick background on me. I started out as just a fan of music and started volunteering for Clayton back in the early 2000s and went from his first employee to co-founding the label. And now I manage the label and manage him. And really excited to be here working with great artists like Brandon and projects like the Anix. So, working with Brandon has been a really cool journey for just how we discovered him. And actually, I was just scrolling through my Spotify Discover Weekly probably 2.5 years ago or so now, and ran across a track off of Ephemeral and reached out to Brandon, thought it was great stuff. And we hit him up about doing a remix for Circle of Dust. And that was the first thing we worked on together. Got that remix in and then quickly started discussing, maybe doing more together. And, it became pretty clear that, Brandon had, kind of a struggling period with, former labels and management and just, general music industry struggles. And, at FiXT, it just was a perfect fit for us to, be an artist servicing label and really try to take care of him. So we were really excited to welcome into the FiXT family. And, pretty quickly we're able to double his numbers on Spotify. And since then we've doubled again. And it's been really exciting to get his music out to more people. So Graphite, which is the new album that we're going to be discussing a little bit here, is his third album with FiXT. And, I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but man, this guy is one of the hardest working people I know in music. He's doing almost everything himself, from recording, engineering, producing, mixing the music, obviously writing it all, but down to the art, doing his own art, graphics, promo videos, music videos, and it's been a pleasure to work with Brandon and his level of talent.
Same with you guys, man. It's been a drastic change from other experiences on other labels. a lot of different labels operate pretty similar in my experience, where it's a very one-sided dialogue, and you as an artist, you don't really have a lot to say in what you want to look like or sound like or who you want to produce and all this stuff. So a lot of the times it always frustrated me, and it was just a strange thing how once I learned how the industry works, they'll sign an artist, put them with a producer that's basically dialing in their guitars, telling them what to play, writing their lyrics, changing, programming their drums or whatever it is. And by the time you have the finished product, it's not even that person anymore. It's the product of a corporation and different other producers and writers involved. So I never really fully understood that. So like when you're hearing some of these big artists, even some smaller ones, the merch isn't designed by them, the video is produced by somebody else, the album's produced by another producer with their own gear. So it's just this weird thing. So with this, I think the cornerstone of everything is authenticity, and just, I'm not the greatest at anything. I'm not an excellent guitar player, keyboard player, vocalist. I'm kind of just like middle of the road in everything I do. But the only thing that matters to me is it's an authentic representation of one person's vision. And because you don't see that a lot. So for me, that's been the funnest thing with FiXT is just being able to do that. And then seeing and meeting people that actually understand it. So
that's awesome to hear that perspective back. We, really just try to be, of service to the artists and, be the team around you that, you need. And, you know, interestingly, you don't need some of those pieces. You just need to be able to express those pieces yourself. And then, you know, we get involved more on distribution and marketing and carrying some of those pieces. So yeah, it's been a really good collaboration for, you know,
it's always tempting to ask you guys for more help, or, you know, to hire an artist to do an album cover, whatever it is. But it's at the same time, the extra effort and pain that's involved in doing it all yourself is just more rewarding. I think when I look back on it, look at the last 2 albums or 3 or whatever it is, just knowing that the entire thing was just finally what I wanted to see this whole time. Since, you know, I've been doing this project since 2001, and it's always been filtered and shaped through other people involved in the project, other band members, labels, producers, whoever it is. Everyone always had their idea of what it should sound like and what it should look like, how we should dress. Like, all these things were constantly being interfered with. And finally, all that's gone. And it's just, boom, right to the point.
Yeah. Well, the album Graphite will be the 3rd album with FiXT, and, you know, it's going on pre-order technically tomorrow in part of the world, and Friday in local time zones in the rest of the world. We've got the new single, Die With You, will be premiering the video here shortly. So wanted to get into some album related questions, and, you know, really just starting with the album title, Graphite. You know, what does that mean to you? And I know there's some little intricacies with that title and definition worked into the album cover. Maybe you can chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, so a while back when I was looking for different shades of black, and of course, graphite's a classic example that's used on like car paint and different things. And I found this really cool microscopic image of it. It was some laboratory shot, and that's what got me kind of on the radar of doing something with that name. But the more I researched graphite, the more I've, you know, the actual material, it's really interesting that it's pretty much the negative or the opposite version of a diamond. It's a very similar structure that they're made of, diamonds and graphite, but graphite, for whatever reason, is just, it's not clear and crystal like a diamond. It's black, dark. So I thought that kind of, the way I saw that is it represents people. You know, we all have the basic same fundamental building blocks. We're all, you know, skin, bone, flesh, blood, but obviously different people. We all have our own personality. So I think a lot of, you know, a lot of the fans are in the same position. We're kind of like the outsider. We've always felt like we don't really fit in with the bright, you know, the happy, that type of person. So graphite's kind of like the anti of all that.
Yeah. And then, you know, we've released several singles from the album already, and Die With You being out here next. But for fans that haven't heard Die With You yet and the rest of the album, you know, what can fans expect, you know, in terms of style or other things you're doing on the album?
I feel like this album and the last 2, Hologram and Shadow Movement, are kind of they're all connected. So this isn't a radical departure from those, but every one of these albums has 3 types of songs on it, 3 styles of song, the way I see it. You have like the more alternative rock, mainstream type of song, like Renegade, for example. I would consider that in that category, or Still Standing, that's in that category. And then I have the second style of song is just straight electronic. And on Graphite, there's some they're really electronic. Some are kind of like 80s, early Depeche Mode style electronic. Actually, the title song, Graphite, is very, very Depeche Mode, like early 80s. And then the middle ground is the fusion of both. It's, you know, like beat driven, like heavy electronic beat driven, but still has guitar in it and that. So Die With You is, for me, it's the exact example of the type of music I would make if I'm not thinking about trying to do anything. It's like the default mode for me is this style. It's heavy beat driven, electronic, you know, huge bass, backbone, with guitar and very simple. I really like, the more simple I'm finding, the more I'm interested in it. Easier the song is to finish, the more I'm interested in it. So that's kind of where it's at.
When you're writing, a song like Die With You, or, some of these, the default mode you go into, are there some standard go-to pieces of gear you're using to get those sounds? Like you're describing, certain characters of the sound, but is there certain gear you're going to for those?
Yeah, I usually always have a Moog sub 37 synthesizer. That's like the backbone bass layer on everything. And then I have a lot of programmed drums, like samples and stuff that I use from a company called That Sound. And in particular, there's a tape. They like taped all these drum machine recordings, like actually on analog tape, and then retaped them back into a tape player. So they have this kind of warped sound to them. So I use that a lot. And pretty much all the songs have those two elements to it. And most of them also have a Fender Jaguar guitar on it, on top of it. So like, it's very easily replicated, I think, all, the sound that I do. It can be played with four people, four instruments, and you can really play the basis of the track.
Sure. Although, you from song to song, album to album, you even if it's with, maybe a simple list of instruments, I think what's unique about you is the way you combine them, I think, is completely unique to you. You have a signature sound, and I don't really hear anybody else sounding like the Anix. So it's cool that.
That's awesome, because it's so hard to tell when you're making the music. I never ever can tell if the song is a complete flop. If it's good, you just have zero idea. So usually the first person to hear it is you when I send it to you guys. And it's just, you never can tell until you start reading comments when the song's out. So
Well, what about, shifting from the kind of the production and the sound of it to kind of, sticking with the song Die With You, which we're going to premiere the video here, talking about some of the meaning of the songs, or what, you touched on it earlier about the album title, but other themes that you're drawing inspiration from.
I think most of the songs, they're written in a way where they can be interpreted two different directions. And a lot of them might sound like a love song or a relationship song, like Die With You, for example. It could be you could interpret it as the Romeo Juliet type of devastating, can't live without you kind of love story. But for me, it was about the struggle with the music industry and the fight to, I think as people, eventually you figure out something in your life that you can't live without. And, for some people it's having a kid, or, buying a house or getting a job, whatever it is. Some people, they're pursuing some kind of dream. So with me, that music thing, it's always been a huge struggle to keep like pushing through it, because there's been so many fails and since I've been doing it. So, a lot of times I'm just thinking, how and why the hell how do I keep doing this? Why? Am I that dumb that I just keep doing it, and who knows what's going to happen? But the thing is, I can't live without it. So that's kind of the meaning of the song. It's something that it's hard to do. You have to fight to keep doing it, but you have no other option.
Well, I think, definitely, certainly speak for myself, but probably many of the fans, that, we're certainly glad you're still pushing forward and releasing music and haven't given up.
Yeah.
And, hopefully we can hear more from you for years to come.
Well, when you hit me up to do the remix, before I was signed to you, I was pretty much done, like just without announcing anything. I was basically out of gas. Like I didn't know what other direction to go in and what else to do with it. So just after our initial phone call, it just ignited something. I don't know what it was. It was just something turned back on. And then it was just a flood of music, just one after another. So I think since in 2 years, 3 albums, and then the soundtrack album, Order Disorder. So
It's
I
a
mean,
lot.
plus dozens and dozens of demos that are unreleased that I never did anything. So it was just like this unbelievable surge of music, and I'm actually moving coming up here, so thankfully I am, because that's forcing me to take a break and stop writing for a little while until I'm done. Just because I'm aware of the supply and demand thing, with all these shoes, and like that's the whole name of the game right now, is supply and demand and how to manage that. But that also applies to music, and I feel like right now I've flooded all the fans with so much music, and you can start to lose the appeal if you just keep dumping things out. So I almost feel like I have to purposely hit the brakes after this and recharge, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears here slightly, and what has the last 2 months or so been like, going through the pandemic, and how has that affected you? How are you coping through that?
Well,
Personally,
yeah,
but
that's actually how the video came about, is because you have nothing to do. So it kind of came at a good time because the album was done, and usually I would have been just writing more songs. But since the album was done, I was looking, I had time to do stuff. So that's how the video idea came up, because originally I wasn't going to do one. And then, I think anyone that's creative, you have this resistance. Like there's a great YouTube video everyone watching should check out. You in the search in YouTube, type resistance artist or something like that. And it talks about anyone that's creative, you have this resistance constantly trying to get you to just sit on the couch and watch TV and eat ice cream. Like there's something that pushes back against you from creating. So you have to get past that. You have to find a way to acknowledge that resistance is there and to get past it somehow. To go force yourself, just walk in the room where all your gear is, sit down, turn the computer on, and just start. And if you can just sit down and start, you can pretty much be on the way. So if you're an artist or something, if you can just get yourself to sit down, get the pencil in your hand, and put it on the paper, then you've started. But it's getting to that point, which is so hard, because you have, everyone's busy, they have tons of things to do. So my workflow is all designed around being the most minimal, easy to engage setup thing possible. So if I wanted to go start a song, the goal is I can leave where I'm sitting right now, walk in the other room, and within under 60 seconds be recording something. That's the goal. That way you have no excuse. You don't have time to go in there and wait for everything to boot up, and then by that time you're like, oh, forget it, I'm just gonna watch TV. So you try to remove all these barricades that block you from creating. So.
Yeah, it's great to hear a little bit of insight on that. We're going to switch to a little more on the video here shortly. We're also going to answer some fan questions. I see there's some in. We received some early as well that we'll go through. Before we switch there, let's take a minute and maybe you've already answered it. You said you need to take a break after this, you're moving, but this album is done, comes out June 26th. Is there other ideas, or do you already have thoughts on what the future of Anix will be?
Yes, we've kind of talked about things in label meetings before, but I think the last 3 albums have turned the ship around into the direction that I wanted to be heard. And I think I've gotten that message out there. I've gotten the sound that I want visually and all that stuff. So I think the next album will be a departure it'll be something just different and new. So I don't want to blow it and give it away, but that's kind of where my head's going. That's the new gear that I'm thinking of getting is all centered around this different type of sound. So yeah.
Yeah, so making a bit of an evolution into doing something different and fresh.
Yeah, even if it's like a 4-song album, but just all in a particular vibe, I think that's something I'd like to try.
So let's jump into some fan questions, and then we'll come back right before we jump into the video and discuss the video a little more.
Okay.
So here's a few from Jacob. What are your favorite synthesizers to use?
So the software synths are so good now. There's so many great programs. Silent is awesome, Massive, Towel. There's all these great ones. But the thing is, I'm so inspired by physical equipment and easy to use, easy to set up equipment. So I'm not inspired to go sit in front of a computer and just code all day, code music basically. That for me, it just doesn't get me in the room. So this one I really like. It's fairly inexpensive. I think it's $600 or something like that. It's a Roland Boutique SCO2 by Studio Electronics collaboration. It's an analog synth, tiny little thing, but it's just monstrous and destructive and like just violent sounding. So anytime I want a tone that I can't get on guitar or with my Moog synths, like a high pitched kind of lead, it's always this. So I really love this thing, and I like synths that aren't too expensive. Like $1,000 and under. For some reason, those are the ones I like, and yeah. But I mean, it ultimately depends on the type of music you're making. If you're going for the song "Die With You," which you'll hear in a second, that's super minimal, and you can get that sound on pretty much anything. Like I can go to Target and buy like a $100 Casio, and I'm sure I can get it pretty close with that. So I think it's just all how you manipulate the sound in your recording station, and yeah.
And let's see, what guitar tuning do you use?
When I was touring and doing a lot of shows, it was always drop C. So that was basically C to C on the high and low end. Recently, it's been just drop D in standard tuning. Jaguars have a short scale, so Jaguars have the neck scale here is very short. So when you tune lower, the string becomes a lot slinkier because it's a shorter neck, versus a Jazzmaster that has a longer neck, so it can accommodate the lower tuning. So all my Jazzmasters are drop C, and then the Jaguars are either an E standard or a drop D.
And then here's one from Marshall. How do you regain motivation if you lose it while working on a project or song? And are there any video game soundtracks that you are fond of? So there's a two for.
Yeah, so Health did the soundtrack for Max Payne. I think that was an incredible job on that. How do you regain motivation? So my biggest thing is get in and get out as soon as possible. So get into the studio, write the song, finish it as soon as possible, and then move on to the next one. I've always found that whenever I get in there, start something, get it halfway done, and then move on to another track, thinking, oh, I'll just get to that one later. I never get back to that track, ever. So for me, I just have to get in and as soon as possible, get it done. And that's what's been working the last 3 years. How I've pumped out so much stuff is just using that mentality. Because there's been several times where I'll get stuck on something and I'll just want to scrap the song or just move on to start something new. But I'll just close the session, call it a night, and come back the next day and start it again, and just power through it. It works.
Vice Cole says, Brandon, it's Steve. Hope you're well. How do you keep on maintaining your brand as your music has obviously evolved? No pun intended.
Man, Steve and I go way back. He's been involved with us from early 2000s. He was helping me when I was making merchandise, like these armbands and everything. He was over there helping, all of it, selling merch at our shows. Yeah, so it's awesome that you're still out there, Steve. What was the question again?
How do you keep maintaining your brand as your music obviously evolved?
Um, I think I just I like very few things. So the things that I do like, I tend to hold on to for a long time. So I think visually, like even the clothes, like everything, colors I like, that's all been around since I can ever remember. For 30 years, I've liked the same kinds of things, and I've been inspired by the same movies and the same artists. So yeah, it could be a challenge sometimes. Like, how do you evolve album to album and make it look different or feel different? But that's the fun part, is just experimenting and finding new colors that work together. But ultimately, I think, when you like the same things, if everything is stemming from Blade Runner, Star Wars, Tron, movies like that, Akira, then it ultimately will always kind of look and feel the same.
Here's one from August Schwartz. What is your graphic design background? Was it a former career or just a hobby?
I was never formally taught anything, actually. So it was just experimenting with Photoshop when it first came out. So I think that was late 90s or something, and just playing around with it. And ultimately that led to just, I'd work jobs and then find a way to work the graphic design into it, or they would discover that I was able to do it, and then that would lead into different things. So I did a lot of like brochure work, doing photos for brochures and catalogs and putting it all together. I got most of the experience is just being on tour and every night making new posters and graphics and assets for social media. So just, if you're constantly doing it, and it's such a challenge to catch people's eye. If you're on tour, you're trying to catch people's eye on these posters or whatever you're putting out. So it was like a fun challenge. So yeah.
And we're just a couple minutes till 6 Pacific for the video premiere, but we're going to answer a few more questions, and then we're going to drop a link in the chat for everybody to go check out the video. So in what app do you create your music? Like what DAW? That's from an anonymous question there.
Logic Pro on an Apple iMac.
What made you decide to become a solo project versus continuing with the full band?
Well, I've been writing the music pretty solo since the inception of the band. So it was usually I would write the song, and then we'd play it live and make changes live, and then come back and re-record it. But there were certain key members, like Chris Yarber. There's Chris Dinger, my brother. We'd all contribute in some way. But Chris Yarber is one of the main writers for a certain period of the band, where it was a true collaboration. He would come with part of a song, then I would finish it, or the other way around. But ultimately, the vision was somewhat compromised. So I think the decision with FiXT to just do it one singular way, that was, it was just something I wanted to do just to get the point across. And I knew it was either cancel cancel the Anix, just fold it, start over, or come back very, very targeted and focused on one direction, one look. And that's where we're at.
Here's another anonymous question, but the track Talking in My Sleep from Hologram in 2019, album made with Emanuela. Who is it?
She's the young lady in the other room. She's my wife.
Of many fans knew that. Owen Sui said, what inspired you to start making music?
It was, well, my dad always had instruments in the house, guitars, and there's a synthesizer, I remember. But it was really The Crow, the movie The Crow in 1994. It was the scene where Eric Draven was playing guitar on the roof, and he had like a black, it looked like a Jackson, but it was, I think, a Charvel guitar. And I remember when the movie came out, I saw the movie, walked back out, bought another ticket, walked right into the next showing, and did it a third time, 3 times in a row. And that was it, man. I just got hooked. That was just the coolest thing I ever saw. And that was also the period when I was really getting into music. So everything in that in around that time, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Depeche Mode, The Cure, all that stuff was hitting me really hard. And The Crow was like the catalyst to just make it happen.
I think that soundtrack was pretty impactful for a lot of people in the 90s, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best movie soundtracks ever created.
Mikhail Chenard Rue, what made you choose the Jaguar over the SG or the Telecaster?
I had a Telecaster at one point, and they're amazing guitars. They're super reliable. They're always in tune. But it just always reminded me kind of like of a cowboy guitar. Like I saw those in like country music a lot. And I had zero interest in Gibsons for whatever reason. I know I've recorded with them, again, bulletproof, like they sound great. But there's this like recklessness about a Jaguar. Like they're always going out of tune. You never know if the switch is in the right position. And I think I just liked that it added that sense of uncertainty. And all my idols played Jaguars or Jazzmasters. So it was like Nirvana, Kurt Cobain was playing it, Gavin from Bush, Brian from Placebo, everyone was playing it, and Sonic Youth. So I just liked the story of them. That they originated as this surf guitar, as like the top of the line Fender, and then for a while they just went. It didn't really sell well. So when all the grunge bands in Seattle were coming out, they were just trying to find the cheapest gear possible. So they found all these Jazzmasters and Jaguars in pawn shops, and then they just defined the culture with that. So, and that's the culture I grew up with.
Here's a couple of quick ones. Ryan Tongson, Brandon, do you design the album covers yourself?
Yes.
Anonymous, what do you think about an album of revamped versions of your early songs? I'd love to hear a new version of Half the World Away, for example.
Possibly. If I run out of new ideas, I could revisit something like that.
Alexander says, hi, Brandon. Are you planning to release an album of unreleased tracks or show more demos on Instagram, maybe early versions of song? I'm sure that many fans would be interested to listen to them.
Out of all the old demos, there's maybe one or two that I'll probably finish. The rest will probably never be heard.
Another anonymous one here. Will we hear instrumental versions of the album Ephemeral in the future?
Probably not, unless we can get the rights to it.
Another anonymous one. Brandon, do you want to start a new project with a different style of music, or how would you address that?
Yeah, that's been talked about with a few different artists right now. Graham being one of them that I did the track Parasite with, and then also another project with Chris Yarber, one of the originating founders of the Anix. So we're talking about some of that stuff, but I think I still have something to say with the Anix, plenty to say, like musically, so I want to explore that.
Gabor asks, hey, so do you have an idea of a track before you start recording, or does the idea come with experimenting?
Both, but usually it happens randomly. It's like walking the dog. I'll hear the melody, and then I'll hear a drum beat, and I'll hear a top melody like a vocal. So then I can pretty much construct the whole song on the dog walk, like the different tracks, like 4 tracks. Then that way when I come into the studio, I already know what I'm going to play, the tempo, the drum sound, the beat, bass line, top melody. So it makes it pretty easy when that happens. It doesn't always happen, but that's probably half the time. That's what it is. I rarely go in there with a blank slate in the studio and just start from no idea.
Nicholas asks, can we please get an entire Fury Weekend versus the Anix album? Maybe collaborate with him again in the future?
That'd be cool.
This is Owen. Have you ever thought about using more low brass sounds in your music? I'm a trombone player and love hearing low brass in electronic music.
Yeah, there's some, I think actually Die For You has this low distorted brass that's kind of warped, but I did use that on 2 or 3 songs on this album. But I agree like that in electronic music.
Yeah. Donovan asks, big fan of the merch. how did you start the whole clothing design side of things?
I think it's just always been part of, if you're a musician, you have to design shirts or something to sell at shows. So that's been ingrained in me for a long time. My aunt was a costume designer for the movie studios, so it's kind of somewhat been in the family of just sewing machines and that kind of thing. And really, a lot of my merch, I try to design it. I'm not in the mindset of wanting a giant, the Anix logo on a shirt in hopes that when you guys wear the shirts, someone's going to see that and that's promotion for me. It's the opposite. So I just want you guys to have a cool shirt, regardless if it has my logo on it or not. And if someone likes the shirt, then you can have the dialogue where it came from. But that's kind of it. I like, again, a very small amount of things, and the merchandise has to fit into that. So.
Nikita asks, I love the Anix since 2010. Brandon posted a demo version song, Hollow. It's a masterpiece. Can we hear a full rock fusion in the future? And another person also asked that you post that, an early demo of the track Hollow. Is it able to hear a full version one day?
So I posted the chorus. There's a verse to it, but without lyrics, and the verse is what was always holding me up. So I want to finish it. I just have to rebuild the track around it. So there's really nothing more to hear at this point than that.
Carrie Vineyard, Midwest fan, asks, how many pairs of shoes do you have?
Probably not as many as people think. Probably around 30 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Vineyard, will Graphite be a digital only release, or will there be a physical CD? I know Hologram was digital only. Are you planning on doing the same for this new album? Can't wait to hear it.
For now, it's digital, but I mean, who knows? Maybe there's opportunity to release all three on vinyl or something. You know, whatever the kids are into these days, cassettes or whatever. I don't know. Maybe.
Christina asking if there's ever a chance of any tours once the world returns to normal.
Maybe it would have to be like a festival circuit, I think, not the old school get in a van, play to like 5 people in a nightclub. But I want to do virtual shows. That's the Die With You video kind of started out as the idea of a virtual live version of the song. So I definitely want to explore that option. So that way everyone can see it. When you go do a tour, you know, local people can see it or people film it, but it's not the same thing. So I think with the virtual, if it can be done cool and right in a different way, I think there's really opportunity there for something cool.
So let's just do a couple more here. Mui Sib, I believe, says, hello, are you planning to release Graphite merch? Maybe, you know, we did some recently. You can touch base on that.
Yeah, I think I'll probably do one more shirt for this album and then give it a break for a little bit. And then, yeah, maybe something else with the black space logo. One more thing with that.
And then anonymous question, will there ever be a collaboration with Clayton?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think you guys just timing wise need to make scheduling happen.
It's surprising we haven't done it yet. It's just been so frantic, but definitely.
Ariel Lee says, what's your process for lyric writing? Do you ever struggle getting the message you want to send right?
I don't worry too much about how much the song makes sense. So for me, it's always the music first and then finding keywords. So I have a running notepad of just cool words. They could be song titles. And then once you identify a cool phrase or something, that can just write itself. You can build off that. And then, you know, you can use thesaurus.com or, you know, whatever you can to help, you know, find different variations of words or things that rhyme together. So yeah, for me, I find the marketing title for a song, something that's cool. They could be applied to merchandise or whatever it is, and then go from there.
Nikita asked, old cars or new cars, and why?
Oh man, both. love the reliability and technology in new cars, but the sound of old cars. And I like old cars were, smaller. New cars are getting just massive and plastic, but definitely both. Love them all.
Michael, Cyber Mike, what's your history with photography?
I did a lot of car photography and catalog photography and music photography stuff. And that's pretty much it. But I don't consider myself a pro photographer at all. It's just, I'm pretty good at just taking something and making it work somehow or another without knowing how to use it. So I have just like zero training. My synthesizers, I probably know how to use 10% of it. My audio workstation, 5% of it. The camera, I know how to just get by and make it work. And that's just how I roll.
Well, let's switch to talking about the making of the music video before we premiere it. But one final question, an anonymous one, was more of a statement to please show us your dog, which I don't know if that's possible, right?
The puppy's in the back right now because he's pretty obnoxious, or not obnoxious, but he's just wild. So he'd be up here biting me right now, but maybe on the next one.
Yep. So we're going to premiere the Die With You music video here in just a couple minutes. So I want to talk about the making of the video before we go into it, and maybe just set the, the backdrop for how you put this video together. Was this a, budget wise, this wasn't a, thousands of dollars music video, you had a unique take on how you put this together. So maybe talk about that for a minute.
So again, this was under quarantine, so you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't really hire anyone to come over and help or anything. So I used a Leica Q2 camera, which is just, a point and shoot camera. It's kind of expensive, but I mean, I could have got the same result on like $1,000 camera. And that was it. Really no tripods, no gear at all aside from just a handheld camera. The budget, I spent $50 on a fog machine, and I borrowed a projector. So you guys have probably all seen these short video clips I do on Instagram, all these glitches and all this stuff. That's all done after the photo or the video is done. So it's done in post-production. Most of the video, I would say 90% of it, the graphics are done, they're all done in real time. So I treated the room, it was done in my living room. I treated it like a stage, like how I would do a live show. So using a projector to do all the glitches live, and the actual colored light bulbs to get the right kind of ambient and all that stuff, and then fog to illuminate and have the light carry over and fill the room. So yeah, besides the obvious things, it was all the graphics and stuff you see were all real life, basically.
And did you have a camera person on this one?
For part of it, yeah, Manuela helped. Any moving shot she was doing. There's a few that I had on a tripod, or that I would hold the camera with one hand and play with the other. But yeah, so it was just her and I that did it, and we shot it in like a couple hours one night, and that was it. So really, it's the product of if you have motivation, doesn't matter what gear you have or how good you are at it. You just have to have the drive to do it. And yeah, that's it. $50 and a camera, and you can do anything.
You did all the editing and post-production as well.
Yeah, I did all that. And yeah, I hope everyone likes it. There's no real story to it. It's just meant to be a person in their studio making music for the most part. And yeah.
Thanks to everybody who joined, took time out of your day to stop by and listen to us chat.
Yeah, so maybe we could do another one of these when the album comes out, because I know there's a lot of questions we didn't get to, but I'm conscious of everyone's time, different time zones, so I don't want to keep you guys waiting. So
yeah, let's do another one. So thanks everybody. Click the link, and we will catch you guys all on social media.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. very inspiring to be able to interact with you guys and to hear your comments. And, you know, you send me messages and repost my stuff, and all that plays a big part in the production of the music. Like, it's, without that, I wouldn't be able to make it. So really, you guys are kind of like the silent member of the band, feeding my motivation. So thank you very much.
All right, just pasting this again here to make sure nobody's missing it up in the chat window. And we'll talk to you guys all soon.